Good morning. Good morning. It's 9 a.m. So it must be Monday. Make It Happen show. Good morning. I'm Cheryl Andrews. I'm also known as the Listening Detective, and I'm your host today. And we're talking about stories and strategies that help you achieve success without stress. And today is no different. We're talking about words that wound and words that heal. And I'm so grateful to have Rob Palmer from Develop Together on the show today. So without any further ado, I'm going to tell you how I met him first. I think it was probably a couple of months, it might even be 5 or 6 months ago now. I put a post out about pushing and on LinkedIn, and Rob was really great to engage. And we got on a Zoom call and we discovered we had a lot in common about words and language. And he happened to mention that he was making something happen with words. And I thought, I've got to get him on the show. So without any further ado, please give Rob a warm welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Cheryl. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for joining us on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock. So just tell us a little bit about how you got into personal development and how the company to Develop Together came about.
It's been a long journey, Cheryl, a long journey.
So how long is that long journey?
It's got several different milestones to it. But I think I was working at the Norwich City College, further education, doing one-on-one work with individual students, like a personal tutor. That was a great job. I loved the one-on-one interaction. I initially trained to be a teacher, but I didn't get along with group stuff. So the one-on-one was definitely more up my field. So I was there for about 4 years, and I thought I need to do something else. There wasn't really much opportunity for me to go anywhere in the college unless I did want to go into teaching. So I thought I need to do my own thing. So I did some research and found that I could just develop a whole set of resources and services to help people do what I love doing, helping people just on an individual basis. So I came up with starting my business, Develop Together.
And I know that you're going to talk today about affirmations. So those of you watching on replay, or you come on live with us in a moment, please sort of tell us about your experience with affirmations, personal affirmations. So first, before we start, I know that I'm going to pop in here. Actually, I've got a link to your website with the shop. So if anybody is listening to this and thinking you want to know more, please go to Rob's website and find out more about these affirmation cards. But tell us about what is an affirmation and how have they helped you on your journey?
That's a good question. I've known about affirmations for quite a number of years, and personally I thought, I'm not sure that's something that I require, because I thought I was a little bit too intellectual for that, arrogantly, so I found out in recent months. So I wasn't really that interested, but I unfortunately went through a mental health breakdown of depression from the back of 2019. And coming out of that, I met up with someone else who said, maybe we should do a accountability partnership and do affirmations morning and evening, check in with each other on WhatsApp, because we're both in a similar place at the moment in our recovery. So let's see what happens. And I thought, okay, I'll do it for him, even though I'm still a bit skeptical of affirmations. But within 2 weeks, I started to notice some changes, really subtle changes, but changes nonetheless. And I thought, oh, maybe there's something to this. And so I carried on. And after the full 30 days that we said we were going to do this for, it was like night and day. So much had changed for me. I felt so much better. It was definitely something that I thought, this works. And I did some research into it. Because initially I thought, oh, it's just all a bit new age woo-woo stuff. But after doing some research, I found out it's actually been studied and it's actually a real thing. And scientifically, it's provable. So I thought this needs to go out to the world. More people need to know this, because that might be the little milestone that changes from where they are now to where they need to be.
And it sounds like that in that particular situation, not only did you have the affirmations, but you had that accountability. So you had that support. And I think it cannot be underestimated that I think there's so much online right now, and you're going to be talking about your resources that you've got, which is, and I think I do them as well. It's not that they don't, but there's the online world. And I think we can get so much in trying to do things privately, trying to do it honest. There's a lot we can do for ourselves. And I just want to reach out to say to anybody that the cards that I know we're going to talk about in a moment, they're going to really help. And so everybody, all of us put stuff out there on social media, YouTube channels, etc., to help people. And I'm going to talk next week about this thing about asking for help, because since I've got an accountability buddy, even as a coach, in the last year to 18 months, that has made a big difference. Sometimes I don't want to have the conversation. I felt like that a bit today, actually, about when I've got to 2 o'clock today. And as I'm talking to you, I'm like, no, I will make myself do it, because I do know afterwards I'll feel better. It's just in that moment before. So there's something about that sharing it as well. Sounds like it played a big part for you, that you started off doing it for somebody else, but actually you're the one that got some benefit out of it as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about this difference of night and day then. So what was happening before the 30 days? And what was happening after having done 30 days of affirmations and buddying up with somebody for accountability?
I'd reached the point in my recovery from depression where I felt a bit stuck and I wasn't really going anywhere. And even though I'd sort of covered a lot of the main issues with the counsellor that I was working with, who was amazing, there's still something deep down that just wasn't quite there. And I knew it was to do with my self-esteem and anxiety that I didn't really know was anxiety until I started having counselling, because I thought anxiety was something completely different than what it actually is. And I was just having these conversations with this chap, and he said, yeah, I've been in this place and I'm kind of there at the moment, but I've had some joy with affirmations. Did you want to just give that a go in an accountability partnership? Because I need to do that again, and it worked for me the first time. So because we got on really well, he was like, yeah, you're the one that I'm choosing to go into this partnership with, so are you up for it? So he basically chose me, and I just said yes.
So what was happening for you before is you'd done some counselling, but you reached a point where you got stuck. And I think I really want to emphasise, as I talk to this about a lot of people, as the listening detective, people often say, oh, I did loads of counselling and it didn't work. And I think it's really important for people to know that we're often counselling is about reflecting on the past. And there will come a point when you get sick of the story and the story doesn't seem to change. But that means counselling has now done its work. And so therefore, that's when we might go into coaching, where you're actually going, that's what the past is. I get why it's happened. I understand myself better, and I can understand why I've got to where I am now. But now I want the past not to influence me, and I want to change and go forward. And that's when you might change to coaching as a form of help to go forward. And I think it's so important, because people maybe diss it or think it was a waste of time and I shouldn't have asked for help. And then they don't want to ask for help again because they think that didn't work. Whereas that is part of the process, that we've often got a part of us that needs to be heard over and over again until we're ready to let that story go. And it's part of that healing journey. So I'm curious about 2 things. You said it's about self-esteem and anxiety, and you didn't really know what it was. So can I ask you a little bit more about that before we find out what day was like after the 30 days? So what was it about anxiety that you discovered that it wasn't what you thought it was?
I first through when I was working with students at the college, because I did the mental health first aid course there, because there wasn't as much mental health support at the college that we thought they required, because I had so many students, and it's like, well, I can't help you with that. I'm not trained as a mental health practitioner. So the best I could do was be a mental health first aider. And so I learned a little bit about anxiety, and I saw lots of students having panic attacks and learning how to deal with those. And so I thought I understood what anxiety was. But I've since found out that it's not that stuff that you can see on the outside. A lot of it is on the inside. And a lot of stuff, well, actually, yeah, I'm like that. Oh, I'm like that as well. And that's me. So I thought, yeah, it looks like I actually do have anxiety. But I never realized that's what it was.
It's so important, is it? It's a really, really valid, because I think people sort of think of anxiety and panic attacks. I had a similar experience. It was actually when I was doing my training for group facilitation. You talk about sort of preferring one-to-one to groups. I knew that I needed to be able to do group facilitation, and it is a real stretch on your system to give equality to a group. And I froze, absolutely froze. My whole system just shut down. And it's only now that I realize, oh, that's what other people call a panic attack. I didn't realize that's what, I didn't have that vocabulary or that label for that particular behavior. And I've been talking to a couple of people recently about anxiety, and it's like, yeah, well, I experienced that as well. And I think it's important for people to know that that sensation of tension in your body or whatever, which is where this push that we're talking about, when to push or when not to push, is it's normal to have some sensation of anxiety when you're doing something that's unfamiliar, uncertain, and you don't know what is on the other side. Your system is going to go, well, this isn't predictable. We don't know if you're going to be okay later on after this has happened. So it's a natural thing that we're all experiencing.
Yeah.
But maybe we won't have that label for it. We won't have that name for it. Some people, it happens very quickly and they hardly notice it's happened. And other people may get stuck in that sensation for a while, and then it can obviously go on to things like panic attacks. So what you discovered is, although you've been helping other people with this thing, you had it as well. It's more of an internal rather than the external that you'd seen. And it's really important, isn't it? Because there's so much goes on in the invisible that we're trying to judge our insides by other people's outsides, and we're trying to learn from each other. Unless we have those conversations, we don't know. So when it was night and day, what happened after then to this anxiety and self-esteem once you've done 30 days of affirmations?
All the things that used to trigger it, I felt I had a lot more control over, and I can just take a breath or a few more, then just bring myself down quite quickly, and then stop the spiral into the pit of despair, which is how anxiety pretty much works. And then because it generally ends up with your heartbeat racing, sometimes you don't even realize, but your heartbeat is going faster, your breathing then speeds up, or you're taking shallower breaths, and so there's less oxygen and less good blood in the system, and so you're less able to think straight. So when I was able to just sense it enough in advance and be like, right, okay, this is something that definitely causes me to go into this thing, so let's start breathing now, so I can just keep myself calm, and so I can approach it with a logical mind, and then attack it that way, rather than getting overly stressed and panicky about something. And then I can either say, right, no, I don't want to do that, or can we do it in a bit or later or differently, because I'm thinking about it with a logical mind.
Yeah. And I talk about the triune brain. So that's that you're talking about sort of breathing and keeping yourself that neocortex part of the brain. And I think it's important for people to know that when we are panicking, anxious, stressed, whatever word you want to use around it, triggered, having an emotional response to something, there's a really good chance that our system could go to flight, or freeze. And sometimes if we can just catch that emotional response, there's a bit in the brain where we can just sort of problem solve and go, actually, where is this coming from? And then we get back into that neocortex. If we don't know where, we don't catch it, then when left, it can get into that reptilian part of the brain where we end up just sort of in flight, or freeze. And as you say, so it's great to hear that you can catch it before. I think you called it sort of the what is it, something vortex? I think is what you called it, spiraling.
Yeah, just in the spiral into the depths of despair is what I said.
Yeah, spiral into depths of despair. That's the word you were using. And so if anyone can relate to that as a metaphor, that might be yours. I've had many people find it's a hole of some sort that they're trying to get out of, dark holes. I remember a lovely client actually that they tipped their resource was slightly different. So yours sounds like you're breathing. They had a visual one that when they felt themselves going into this hole, they realized if they pushed the hole over, they could just walk out. So it was just, it is that thing, isn't it? Is when you've got a resource, once you can get to know your own system, then you've got choice, haven't you? And that's what I heard is you can go, oh, I know that this environment, this thing is likely to trigger me. So I'll make sure I'm breathing now so I can think more logically. And then you can also ask for your needs to be met by the sounds of it. You can sort of say, actually, could do this later, or can we do it differently? Or just decide not to do it if you know that's the most resourceful thing for you. So when it was sort of, you've got those resources, what's the impact been able to catch yourself like that and make those decisions in the moment?
I'm just a lot calmer, and people have actually commented on that when I was first sort of on the after the 30 days, and then I decided to continue it personally after the 30 days. People said, yeah, you do seem a lot calmer now, because before I used to be like on the edge all the time and waiting to sort of jump, or quite defensive, because I was constantly on edge and I didn't even realize that that's what it was. But other people noticed. So I think that was more of a indication than me noticing it in myself, because when other people notice, then it's like, it's obviously big enough that they notice. So however the differences in how I felt are, if other people notice, they must be big enough for other people to notice.
Yeah. And that's that whole thing about the invisible visible, though, isn't it? I know some people, and I think I can put myself in the same category, I was pretty good at hiding it externally, or so I thought. But what I didn't realize, as I was wearing this mask of performance, that everything's okay, even though I felt absolutely awful on the inside, my face was probably a little stiffer than I realized in trying to smile and get through things like this, and doing all the, you don't realize perhaps how clunky, or like you say, less relaxed, less flowy you are, until someone goes, oh my God, you look really relaxed today. You think, oh yeah, I am actually, but not really. You're not consciously aware of how it's changed on the outside as well as the inside. That's great.
Yeah.
Now we're taught, the theme today is these words that wound, words that heal. So you've been using words to heal, and we're going to talk a bit more about those cards in a moment. We're going to show a couple of them off today. But going back before that led up to this episode, or whatever the word you want to use for depression, because you've talked about from when you sort of were coming out of the recovery, having had counselling. I'm really curious about, and this is how our conversation started, about, we can push ourselves, and it can be a really good thing. So you've pushed yourself to do affirmations for 30 days, even though you thought they're a bit woo-woo and probably weren't going to work. And you've pushed yourself and got this result. And I'm making up, and I'm inferring that you perhaps were pushing yourself, and it resulted in depression, anxiety, where you low self-esteem. So before I ask that question, does that make sense of your experience, where there was a pushing that didn't work and a pushing that does work?
In a way, I think possibly the pushing that didn't work was that defensive mechanism and that independent or the independence I have of like, I can figure this out myself. I don't need any help. And for the first year before I finally got diagnosed, I was thinking I'm clever enough to just deal with it on my own and coach myself out of it. It's going to be fine. And then it just got worse and worse and worse and deeper. And then I had to do what I say to everyone else, ask for help. And then I did. And then, yeah, I was on the way out.
Well, I'm doing
Again.
anything about asking help for next week. So I can so resonate with that. I mean, 2012 was when I collapsed, and I'd been coaching for 4 years, but mentoring and motivating other people for nearly 20 odd years. And I had literally been doing that on my own, thinking I should be able to do this. I should be able to do this for myself. And so again, I just want to emphasize to people, I think we just don't understand how the brain works, that we can read something, a coaching question or an affirmation. But when we hear it externally, when another human being is there, I think there's two things that happen. One, our system hears it differently because it's a different voice to the one we verbalize or think inside. But secondly, that part you talked about, when you get into the panicky state, that part of our brain that can either go into, let's think about this logically, or the one that goes, oh my God, we can't cope. When we've got somebody with us, there's a part of our system that goes, you're not on your own.
Yeah.
And when you're not on your own, that part of your brain that's basically designed to be a pack mentality, that we're supposed to be in a pack, we're supposed to be in groups, we're supposed to be, in a collective.
Yeah.
It can stop worrying about whether you're safe or whether you're okay in the group, because you go, I've got somebody here that's got my back. It's okay. Which means it takes less energy and you can stay in that curiosity state for longer. When you're trying to do it on your own, you're more likely to keep tipping into, and it takes so much more energy.
Yes.
Trying to do it by yourself, whereas your system just can feel held when you've got one person. So yeah, and I think I'm sure there's a book I'm going to write one day called Independence is Overrated, because I think we are a generation of people that have been like really sort of want to be independent, want to prove what we can do. But let's be really honest, Richard Branson's of this world, nobody did it on their own.
No.
Nobody.
No.
And yet I think in that sense of wanting to be validated, to feel worthy, to feel like you make a difference, that you matter, it's rather than sort of going, well, actually, I played my part in this system. That's how I add value, rather than I have to stand out and be this all singing and dancing person that did it all by themselves. Yeah, I'm probably going off in a little story of my own here right now. So when that's the pushing that didn't work, with that independence, thinking you should be able to do it by yourself, what's the kind of pushing that does work for you?
I've still got very much the independence part of me that's just inbuilt. And I don't think that's going anywhere. But I think now, through the journey I've taken with my mental health, I've understood that even though I can do lots of things myself, and to a certain extent, I need to be to a certain point self-reliant. So I'm the person that needs to do the stuff. There is points that I am allowed to ask for help, because it's like, I don't know how to really do this, or I can't do this myself quickly. So who do I know, or where can I go to get some help from someone that already knows how to do it quickly, so that I'm not wasting all my time trying to figure out something that someone else can just do.
And so when you have to push to ask for help, and it's about, something either you don't know how to do or somebody else could do it quicker for you, that asking for help for you is like what?
Painful. It's to do with pride, and I've recently learnt that pride is just not a good quality to have. And it's that one that people think is a good thing because they want to be proud of themselves or other people, but it's not very productive It's just a momentary feeling. You need to then let that go and say, okay, what do I actually now need to do? What's the action I need to take?
Yeah. So for you, you've discovered that pride isn't a useful thing. It's a momentary thing, and then you have to think about action. I'd love to know, viewers on watching on replay, you know, what's your thoughts about pride and proud? I know for me, what comes up is I want to be proud of myself, you know, what I've achieved. That's more of a evaluation of progression. But there's another kind of proud where, you know, I'm not too proud to ask for help. That expression, isn't it? Where you sort of got that. So I guess it's the same like the push, isn't there? There's probably a time when it does work and a time when it doesn't. And the key is for you to evaluate it for yourself. So you'll be able to personally know when you should push through. And I hear that expression as a metaphor, get over yourself, or get past that sort of sensation, that feeling. And when you ask for help and you push through then that painful feeling of having to ask for help because it's pride that's stopping you, then what happens when you do push through and ask for help?
Then I tend to go into this either nervousness for rejection. If people say, sorry, no, I can't help with that, then that hits me in the rejection thing, which is one of the reasons I wasn't asking for help beforehand, because I was scared that people would say no, or I didn't hit that self-esteem part where I didn't think I was worthy enough to be helped. So it's still a work in progress, but I am asking for help more. But it's still difficult, and I've still got some of those fears underlying it.
I can assure you, you're not alone. I've spent the last 6 years writing a book about it, and working with people. It is definitely, and it sounds like you've noticed that there's this thing called pride that was stopping you from asking for help, and that wasn't useful for you. Then you learn to ask for help, and then you realize there's this thing you're going to have to deal with, which might be rejection and people saying no, and that you're working on that at the moment. So I'll leave it there today, and just say to you, I absolutely know from the work that I've done. We worked for 500 or 600 people over the last 14 years. I can assure you, you are not on your own, and I'm also there. In fact, the post I've got to go out tomorrow is the hinting versus asking, because I know I'm very good at hinting that I need help, hoping somebody will mind read and come running over and support me. And then I get equally frustrated that they haven't picked up on the vibe. So thank you for being so open and honest with us, because it's these honest and helpful conversations that help make what goes on inside us visible for other people, that I hope will give people the courage to actually ask for that help that they need. And it is, unfortunately, it's a case of sometimes you have to keep on asking till you get it, because you might have been asking the right person, but at the wrong time for that person. And so having, you know, I say to people, you might be like, I see a lot of people putting a lot of pressure on their significant other half. They want their other half to be the person that can do all the different kinds of listening. But if you look at practical things, we all know that we have some that can do DIY and car mechanics, and some that can sew, and some that can cook, and some that can iron, but not everybody can do everything. And I think we forget that on an emotional support level as well, that you know, your partner cannot be all support that you're ever going to need, and you might need to go to your another network, another circle of friends, or even professional networks like ourselves to get that help. So we'll go over by about 5 minutes. Let's have a look at these cards then. Tell us more about these cards that you've produced, because I know you're very excited and you've just launched them. And I'm going to put the
I need to hold it correctly for the camera.
So affirmation cards. So these are a pack of cards that people can now get, so they could order them on the shop if they're not ready to ask for help directly. This could be the first stepping stone to words that heal rather than words that wound. So tell us a little bit about these cards then.
So I've got one card here, I'm worthy of abundance. This is a good one. If you're seeing this sort of thing for the first time, it might be a bit questionable. What does that mean? in terms of an affirmation and how am I supposed to sort of take it in. But the great thing is there's a little QR code on the back of the card, which takes people to a short video of me just going into a little bit more context of that affirmation, put a bit of meaning behind it that might help someone connect with the affirmation itself a little bit more. Plus, if you can think of another way to help you connect with it, you can write it down in this space here.
The only trouble with StreamYard, you've got to try and work out left for right when you're looking at the screen, don't you?
Do it. So there's a QR code on the back of each individual affirmation. So there's lots of different ways that you can connect with each affirmation that works for you, because not everyone's the same. So just having the words on the card on the front isn't really going to be enough for everybody, and not for every single affirmation. So getting that extra context is putting a little bit more meaning behind it, and so you can find how you can connect with it. Some affirmations you might not connect with at all. I've had those before. I've discarded them out of my routine. It's like, that doesn't mean anything to me, and so I don't use that affirmation anymore. Then there's other affirmations that I'm like, I think that does mean what I want it to mean, but I need to connect with it better. So I just keep putting it in there and trying to think about it differently. And other ones, they connect with me instantly. And in the early days of me doing affirmations, almost every affirmation made me cry. I was like, wow, that means a lot. That means a lot. That means a lot. That means a lot. So now I'm not as tearful in my affirmations. But
that sounds like one of the sort of words that heal. You know, and also, because you can do it in private, can't you? It can sometimes be that part of you that was wounded by something, that crying can be the release, can't it?
Absolutely.
I sort of see it as almost emotions getting locked in our system, and sometimes talking them out will be one way of releasing them. Sometimes, you know, anger can be a way of releasing it. Sometimes it's the tears, but somehow they can get stuck in your system. And if we don't have some process, and we're all individual and we all have to find our own way. I think for me, when I've done affirmations, I remember the first ones, I think it was when I very first started training as a coach in 2006. And it was things like, I am successful. And I've got a real strong core value of honesty. And it felt so dishonest to be saying something that wasn't in my mind true. And so there's something else about these affirmations, that they have to be in the present tense. So tell us a little bit more about why they're framed the way that they are, because it's got to be in the I, and it has to be present. From what I remember,
it has to be present, but it's an odd one. It's present in the future. So in the future, your future self is all the things that you're saying in your affirmations, and it's like fixing your subconscious to believe those things are true now, so it can then work towards making those things align with the present, the now present. And so it's so your conscious mind can say it and believe it in the future, and so it all then brings it all together. It's a little bit complex.
I think from a clean language facilitator point of view, we repeat the person's words back to them, and because they might say confident, and they might have said, I used to be confident and I'd like to be more confident, but I'm just using a when confident. What kind of confident is that confident? It tends to bring it into the present now, just by the nature of the questions that we do. And I know for me, what worked was it was a stepping stone, because it felt too big to go from that I really feel a failure to I'm successful. It was too big a leap for my whole system was just going, well, it's just a load of poo-poo. That's not true, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I found having things like, I'm getting more successful each and every day, it was something that it was a small step, but that's that my system could go, yeah, I can get on with that. And then I was then consciously starting to notice when I have been successful or when things have worked, and therefore I could more align with those affirmations. But I just don't think it can be underestimated that, you know, certain words can hurt us. And you talked before about things that trigger you. I think that's another thing that you're talking about, isn't it? When you read the thing, you may have an emotional response, and you could have one of joy because it's like, oh my God, that's so true. And that is where I'm at right now. And how good is that? Because you remember when you weren't.
Yeah.
But equally, it can be, oh my God, I so wish I was that, but I'm so not. And so it's the whole point of sitting, it sounds like, what you're doing, your practice is you're sitting with that emotion, which is where you said your process really worked for you, is to catch that emotion. So you can be more aware in every day if somebody uses that language, or maybe you see somebody who's got loads of abundance and they're always really, it makes sense of why it's bothering you and why it's triggering it. So that's another way of using the cards by the sounds of it. So there are, and what's when you read them, is there a specific thing that you're supposed to do? Because I seem to remember something about having to say them out loud, or is it you just write them? What's
say them out loud? That's what I've done because I live alone, so I've got nobody listening in. But you can also say them in your head, and there have been times when I've been traveling and I need to do them, but I'm like in a car with other people, and so I just read them off my phone and bit in my head. I might still mime them to try and get them in, but most of the time I can say them out loud. But saying them in your head is fine too. But there's a great app, I wish I could remember the name of it, but there's a great app that you can actually record yourself reading the affirmations, and then if you've got headphones you can listen to it, and so it's still your voice, and so you can still pick it up. And so it's the kind of good intermediary point between either thinking it or reading it in your head and saying it out loud.
I tell you, I've done that before, coaching session, with the questions I would ask my clients, so that I could then hear the side of me, so that I could actually listen to the questions. Then I just pause. This, of course, I'm now realizing, leading into my completely needing to be independent, don't want to ask for help thing. It was something I did as a strategy to avoid that having to go out help. But it's also that fact that sometimes we just don't have access to people, like you say, is that the body keeps score information. So like you said about miming it, and I think sometimes when we do, you know, if you say I am successful, if you go, the fact you're moving your jaw will help them remember it. But when you do say it out loud, you're playing with all of these things and noting how your own system, your own body, mind reacts and responds. Because I imagine maybe the more internally introspective people will get on with just reading and thinking them, where reference and may have to say them out loud. And I think it might be worth playing with those. And I'm also aware of what you just said, that it's embarrassing if other people can hear you, because I know that I've done them before, and I'm much more conscious because I've got a house full of people nearly all the time. There's always somebody that can overhear me. So yeah, I'm just aware now that the word embarrassing or embarrassment comes up. So I might have to just deal with that one, so that I'm okay with helping myself in a way that works for me, even though other people can hear me. So as we wrap up the show today, is there anything else you want to add about affirmations, pushing yourself when it doesn't work, or pushing when it does work, before we close today?
I think, we could go down rabbit holes of all kinds of different discussions if I start to say anything else. But I'm putting out 3 videos a week at the moment on my Instagram, my LinkedIn, and my Facebook channels for Develop Together. So they're all bits of information added to both affirmations and other bits and pieces that you need to remember, just in terms of personal development. So people can find out more about my thoughts on that stuff if they go to those channels.
Fantastic. So you have got the LinkedIn and the website in the show notes for today. So please get in touch with Rob Palmer. Let him know that you've watched the show. So when you send him a random request from LinkedIn or somewhere else, at least he knows where you're coming from. And I look forward to hearing what happens next. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Rob.
No, thanks very much, Cheryl.
And I'll see you again soon. So that brings us to the end of the show. And as you know, I say it's really great to listen to everybody else. And I love it when you listen to me and our guests. However, now it's time to listen to yourself. Take a moment now and think, what do you know now? And what difference does knowing that make? In the world of information and the age of economy, there is always someone like me and Rob telling you stuff, sharing stuff. You can have so many words of wisdom coming flying through to you. But until you take that moment to consciously decide what you want to have happen with that information, your system could accidentally become overwhelmed. So given all that, think about the week ahead. What would you like to have happen? And for that to happen, how do you need to be? What kind of you is that you? And for you to be like that, and for you to get the outcome that you want, what kind of resource and support might you need? And following on from our conversation today, maybe it's some affirmation cards that will help you to just play with and notice which words heal and which ones wound, which ones can resource you. It might be working with someone like Rob to actually help you craft affirmations that are bespoke to you, ones that really resonate with your system right now. And if you don't know, but you know you really do need help, you don't know how to ask for it, then you know where I am. And I look forward to hearing from you if that will be of help to you. Have a great week, and I'll see you again next week. We're going to be talking about how to ask for help.